bit of a disclaimer before we begin. There's going to be like thunderstorms going on outside the window, so don't pay attention to that. With that out of the way, let's begin. So, how do you combat the monsters who are attacking you? Simple. You become them and pull at them. It's that simple. In February of 2006, it was reported that Guillermo del Toro, the director, would direct Travis Beachman's fantasy screenplay, Killing on Carnival Row, but the project never materialized. Beacham received Pacific Rim the following year. While walking on the beach near Santa Monica Pier, the screenwriter imagined a giant robot and a giant monster fighting to the death. They just sort of materialized out of the fog. These vast, godlike things. He later conceived the idea that each robot had two pilots, asking, what happens when one of those people dies? Deciding this will be a story about loss, moving on after the loss, and dealing with survivor's guilt, Beacham commenced writing the film. On May 28, 2010, it was reported that Legendary Pictures had purchased Beacham's detailed 25-page film treatment. The name of the film will be mentioned later. Filming began on November 14, 2011, and continued into Toronto, Canada, into April of 2012. Del Toro gave an update after the second week into filming. The film was referred to as Silent Seas and Still Seas during production. The film was shot using Red Epic cameras. At first, Guillermo del Toro decided to not shoot or convert the film into 3D as the effect would not work due to the sheer size of the film's robots and monsters, explaining, I didn't want to make the movie 3D because when you have things that big, the thing that happens naturally, you're looking at two buildings, let's say at 300 feet away. If you move, there is no parallax. They're so big that in 3D, you barely notice anything no matter how fast you move. To force the 3D effects for robots and monsters that are supposed to be big, you are making their perspective miniaturized, making them human scale. In terms of the designs, Mother Nature, Del Toro envisioned the movie as an earnest, colorful adventure story with an incredible airy and light feel, in contrast to the super brooding, super dark, cynical summer movie. The director focused on big, beautiful, sophisticated visuals and action that would satisfy an adult audience, but has his real hope is to introduce the kaiju and mecha genres to a generation of children. The film was to honor the kaiju and mecha genres while creating an original standalone film, something cautious of the heritage, but not an homage of the greatest hits of everything. The director made it a good point of starting from scratch, without emulating or referencing any previous examples of those genres. Seriously, Mother Nature, you're giving me a hard time, man. He also cautioned to his designers not to turn to films like Gamera, Godzilla, or The War of the Gargantuas for inspiration, stating, I didn't want to be postmodern or referential or just belong to a genre. He wanted to make something new. The final result was Pacific Rim, released on July 12th, 2013. But before we get into the plot, I'm going to take a 2-minute break. I'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Anyway, without further delay, let's begin. The spoilers are up ahead. You have been warned. Jesus Christ, Mother Nature, calm down. Anyway, in 2013, an interdimensional portal called the Breach opens at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, from which giant monsters known as the Kaiju emerge, destroying various cities across the Pacific Rim. Roll the credits. In response, humanity builds massive robots called Jaegers to combat the monsters. Each Jaeger is piloted by 2 to 3 pilots who are mentally linked in a process called drifting to share the mental stress of piloting the machine. In the year 2020, brothers Yancey and Raleigh Beckett piloted the Jaeger Gypsy Danger to defend the Anchorage from a Category 3 kaiju codenamed Knifehead. During the confrontation, the kaiju unexpectedly pierces the Jaeger's armor, ripping out his left arm and half of his head, which pulls Yancey out of the con pod, killing him. Eventually, Raleigh, piloting the damaged Jaeger solo, brave of you, kills Knifehead and walks Gypsy back to shore by himself before collapsing. Traumatized by the loss of his brother and the strain of drifting alone, I almost said away, Raleigh quits the Jaeger program. 5 years later, in response to the increasing power and number of kaiju attacks, and despite evidence of the effectiveness of the Jaeger program, world leaders over Jaeger program director Marshall Stacker Pentecost protests makes the decision to cease funding the Jaeger program and replace it with coastal defense walls, believing it to be a more effective option. Tell that to Trump, since he can't even keep all the Mexicans out. Marshal Pentecost, under orders, then moves the remaining 4 Jaegers to the Shadow Dome, the last remaining Jaeger base in Hong Kong. During a subsequent attack on Sydney, however, a kaiju is seen to demolish the city's coastal defense wall and proceeds to wreak havoc and destruction. See, I told you walls were a bad idea. Determined to bring about the destruction of the kaiju once and for all, Pentecost plans to destroy the breach with a nuclear bomb. Good luck with that. Meanwhile, Raleigh is engaged in the coastal wall building program. Pentecost tracks him down and eventually persuades Raleigh to come back to the Jaeger program. While at the Hong Kong Shadow Dome, Raleigh meets Mako Mori, who is Pentecost's adopted daughter and the director of the Jaeger Restoration Program. Raleigh and Mako are found to be compatible pilots, yet Pentecost is against Mako entering the Jaeger program, but she convinces him to permit her to co-pilot the restored Gypsy Danger. During the first trip, however, Mako gets lost in the memory of her parents dying in a kaiju attack and in then chasing the rabbit. Believing that she is going to destroy the kaiju, Mako activates Gypsy's plasma cannon, in reality threatening to destroy the Shadow Dome. Oh dear. Because of this, both are subsequently relieved of combat duty. While in the drift, however, and having seen Mako's memories, Raleigh comes to understand Pentagost's decision. He saw that it was Pentagost who has saved her from the kaiju attack that killed her parents. Armed with this knowledge, Raleigh confronts Pentagost and persuades him to bring Mako on board. Pentagost consults the kaiju experts Newton and Herman to plan the assault on the breach. Newton was able to drift with a piece of a kaiju brain, but only saw fragmented memories, which revealed that the kaiju are in fact genetically engineered by a race of extraterrestrial beings later on called the Precursors to conquer Earth. Of course. He proposed fighting a fresh brain, and is sent by Pentagost to meet Hannibal Chow, a black market dealer of kaiju organs. Chow berates Newton, who realizes the brain also accesses his memory due to the two-way nature of drifting. Since all the kaiju share collective memories, they now have some of its knowledge. To which I'm sure that's not a bad thing at all. Two Category 4 kaijus emerge, Otachi and Leatherback, and approach Hong Kong to find Newton. Oh dear. In response, the humans deploy 3 Jaegers, Crimson Typhoon, Cherno Alpha, and Striker Eureka, to intercept them. However, the creatures destroy Cherno and Crimson and disable Striker with an EMP blast. Otachi then proceeds to rampage through the streets in attempt to find Newton. Again, oh very dear. Having no other choice, Pentagost deploys Gypsy Danger because of its analog nuclear reactor, which manages to slay both kaiju, Leatherback by emptying 2 volleys of shots from his plasma caster, and Otachi by slicing it in half while in the air. Newton and Chow inspects the corpse and finds out that Otachi is pregnant. The infant kaiju bursts out, swallows Chow whole, and is proceeded to be strangled by its own umbilical cord. Good going there, kid. Newton and Herman drift with the infant's brain and discover the breach will only open in the presence of a kaiju's DNA. The Shadow Dome proceeds with the attack on the breach with Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka. Pentagost, who is dying from radiation sickness, replaces the injured Herc Hansen to pilot Striker. 2 Category 4, Scunner and Raiju, and 1 Category 5 creature, Slattern, emerge from the breach to defend it. Gypsy kills Raiju, but Striker is immobilized by Slattern. Gypsy attempts to help Striker, but Pentagost warns the crippled Jaeger to stay away, telling them to use Gypsy's nuclear reactor to destroy the breach. Pentagost and Shock then detonate the bomb, killing Scunner and immortally wounding Slattern. Gypsy finishes off Slattern with a blast from its nuclear vortex and uses its corpse to go through the breach. Raleigh sets Gypsy's reactor to overload in 60 seconds. Raleigh and Mako eject from Gypsy and go back through the breach. The reactor explodes and the breach is destroyed. The 2 escape pods surface in the Pacific Ocean. Raleigh and Mako embrace as helicopters are sent out to retrieve them. Oh, and Hannibal Chow is still alive. How? Anyway, I'm gonna take a 3-minute break. I'll be right back. on, shall we? Del Toro wanted to break from the mass death and destruction featured in contemporary blockbuster films and made a point of showing the streets and buildings, being evacuated before kaiju attacks, ensuring that the destruction depicted is completely remorseless. The director even stated, "I don't want people being crushed. I want the joy that I used to get seeing Godzilla toss a tank without having to think there are guys in the tank. What I think is you could do nothing but echo the moment you're in. There is a global anxiety about how fragile the status quo is and the safety of citizens. But in my mind, honestly, the film is another realm. There is no correlation to the real world. There is no fear of copycat kaiju attack because a kaiju saw it on the news and said, 'I'm going to destroy Seattle.' In my case, I'm picking up a tradition, one that started right after World War II and was a copying mechanism, in a way for Japan to heal the wounds of that war. And it's integral for a kaiju to rampage in the city. And everyone came to understand that. While not doing well at the box office, Pacific Rim received positive reviews from critics and audiences. The Daily Telegraph's Robbie Collin awarded the film 5 stars out of 5, liking the experience of watching it to rediscovering a favorite childhood cartoon, a live-action cartoon that's actually good. Todd McCarthy of The Hollywood Reporter gave a positive review, describing the film as the sum of the potential every monster film had ever tried to fulfill. And finally, Rolling Stone's Peter Travers called the film the work of a humanist ready to banish cynicism for compassion, saying that Del Toro drives the action with a heartbeat. Now it's my turn. A love letter indeed. Even though I'm not a mecha anime fan at all, it's still a great movie. The story is very simple and easy to understand. Monsters appear, the world panics, they build giant robots, bam, you got your plot. And again, it's so simple, it works. All of the characters feel so anime. That's not a bad thing at all. I do like it. Even the comic relief duo are a joy to watch. Both of them feel like an old married couple. Best human highlight? Mako. Best development out of all of them. I just wish the others had the same treatment. You may think that this movie has no practical effects in it at all. You're dead wrong. Within the cockpit, that is practical, and it is superb. Moving on to the CGI, good lord. It's like I ordered a sirloin steak and it is cooked beautifully, and that's how I feel about the CGI. Delicious. The soundtrack in this movie is really good. The best highlight for me goes to 2,500 tons of awesome. When those brass notes hit, it means doomsday is around the corner. And unfortunately, I can't play it right now because of copyright issues. Overall, Pacific Rim is a great film. Though, if I wanted to nitpick for a bit, I guess some elements of the story were kind of forgotten, and some of the characters do kind of rub me the wrong way. But with that said, the movie gets my final grade of 94 Jaegers falling out of the sky out of 100. Buy this movie on Blu-ray and digital.